morning, everybody. Hello. Thank you very much for coming this evening. Welcome to Fashion Bites. My name's Hywel Davies, and I'm the moderator for this evening's session, and I'm going to introduce you to these fantastic panellists in a minute. I just want to draw your attention to the information that's on the screen, the hashtag information, and also the Wi-Fi information if anybody needs it. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay, good, thank you. So, yeah, thank you very much for coming. I just want to say this is a collaboration between Look and also University of the Arts, who have allowed us to use this space this evening, so thanks to them. So we've got some questions that we're going to be asking the panel members, and these questions have been taken from questions that some of the guests have sent in. And there will also be time afterwards for a question and answer session, so we'll do that after we've got through some of the questions here. So we're going to move as quickly as we can because we've only got an hour or so. So I'm going to start by allowing the panel members to introduce themselves to everybody. So if we can start with Diane, please.
I'm Diane Pernet, and I started my blog February 2005, so that's like 7 years. And I started Fashion Film Festival 2006. At that time it was called You Wear It Well. And a Shaded View on Fashion Film 2008. And I'm co-editor-in-chief of Zoo magazine.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm Melanie. I'm the digital marketing and social media manager at Dazed. I've been working there for 2 years now, looking after Dazed and Confused and another magazine, online presence and social media. And that's it. I also have a blog, a Tumblr blog. This or that. Well, since we're here to talk about digital, I just thought I would. And Tumblr is quite on trend. I would say I have a Tumblr. I've started a Tumblr a year and a half ago. Well, this or that. That's it.
Hi, I'm the creative director for Purple Magazine Online. I actually used to work at Dazed with Melanie, and I've worked at Purple for about a year, and we're slowly coming to a point where the website's coming to life, so it's an interesting time for us.
Thank you.
So I'm Geoff. I started a company called Edited along with someone called Julia, and we sell information to fashion brands, labels, retailers and suppliers about what's going on in the industry. And we do that by, we don't do that by chasing people down the road and taking photos of them or guessing what's happening. We do that by measuring the industry.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Sadlier. I'm the global PR consultant for Carlotta International, and I also have my own blog, which is shelbyshelley.com, and I live on Twitter.
Okay. Thank you.
Literally do.
Yes.
Maybe on behalf of Look, I would like to thank the team for organizing this, and you guys that you are here with us. It's amazing. I'm Tamás. I work for a company called Look, which is hosting this event. And Look is, think of Look like Tumblr for this specific vertical for specific needs of fashion designers. So we're very much focused on helping them in building awareness, building up their fan base around their brand, and helping them in basically exposing their work and in being in constant feedback and being in constant contact with their followers, and helping them in monetizing on the merchandise.
The questions that we're going to go through now, they're in sort of three sort of distinct sections, so you can kind of see the sort of chain of thought that we're going through. So the first section we're sort of looking at is the sort of idea between quantity and quality with the amount of content, fashion content online. And then the second section is about the consumption of fashion online, how we actually consume it and how people engage with it. And then finally, and this sort of final section of questions has come a lot because of some of the questions that were sent in. And it's about how people should think about engaging with online media and new media platforms, whether they're a designer or a journalist, and how they should think about using social media to help progress their career. So we're going to start straight away with a question to Diane. Obviously, you know, you were one of the first people to start. Is that better? Okay, we'll have to do like a duet. So, you started your blog in 2005, so it was very early. And when you see all the sort of different amount of information that's now online, what do you think about the issues between quality and quantity?
Obviously, I think quality is more important than quantity. It's interesting because when I started, there was this, actually how it started was there was this girl called Anina who had something called 360 Fashion. And she said, would you be interested in using this Nokia phone and life blogging? And that was something like in 2005, February. Nobody knew what life blogging was. I mean, now it's kind of common. It's all pre-Twitter and everything else. And now, of course, there are millions of blogs. It's kind of interesting. And I think the way to define what's interesting, we were just talking, Melanie and I particularly like Another, because you look at it and it's the format and it's not overstimulation, it's quality, not quantity. And I think that's what the key is. And having your own voice.
Okay. And how do you personally, because do you spend a lot of time looking at other blogs, and how do you decide whether you think something is quality?
Well, it's easy, but I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at other blogs. I look at Twitter more and, you know, Business of Fashion aggregator.
Okay.
I don't have time to do that.
Okay.
And I follow links.
Okay.
And it's easy. I mean, it's easy to see what's good and what's not good.
And how do you know what's good? Is it personal?
Personal to everything I do is by instinct.
Okay. Okay.
There's no like formula to it.
Okay, but is there sort of common issues that you see in other blogs where you think things aren't successful?
Well, I think where it's not successful is somebody that's just cutting and pasting. It's only successful when you produce original material. And
do you think blogs have been a victim of their own success in that there's too many?
Well, there's a lot of them, that's for sure. But if you have your own voice, I guess you can find your own niche in the market.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's good that fashion has become so democratic, and everything's accessible, and Twitter makes it easier.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Diane. Moving on to Geoff. I think we might have to pass down. Sorry. So sort of thinking about all this information that's out there about fashion online, how from what you do in your perspective, how do you see that influencing the industry?
Well, the democracy that you talked about is so important and so interesting now, because trends really do come up from the ground floor as well as from on high. And now that the industry can react so quickly, you know, on the business side, all of the supply chain can be much quicker. And we've seen this, right? Like we've seen, and it's quite controversial how that's happened in the past, you know, because fast fashion companies will look at what's going on and what's interesting and just kind of knock it off. But I think what's super interesting now is it can be very authentic and things can come up from the ground floor and you can react very, very quickly in the business of fashion to address what consumers are interested in. So it's kind of the ultimate democracy, and that's what we help labels do a little bit as well. But I think it's super compelling.
Okay, and does any of the other panel members have any thoughts on that? Shall
I mean, I would add to Geoff's comment is that I mean, I think what actually I also see happening is actually that literally we have here an amazing opportunity to change the business model of a brand or of a fashion designer into something better, to something with better cash cycles, to something with more substance. And what I mean by that is actually by you know, giving the people the possibility to connect directly with brands I mean, we see it out there with Burberry, which is doing an amazing job by showing their collections to the customers and customers to pre-order actually the whole collection. So this makes the cash cycles so much more efficient. Just like in general, like the opportunity of cutting out middleman, it's not solving everything, but it's definitely a very, very big portion of, in my belief, big portion of future fashion brands.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, can we ask you from a PR perspective, what are the issues about quantity and quality with information?
Well, I think data's everything when you're researching for, who you're approaching for titles and things like that. It comes kind of back down to circulation. There's two different types of kind of blogs. There's one that has a huge amount of traffic, if you kind of want to spread a big word and, amongst a kind of a mass consumer. And then there's another kind of blog which doesn't have as many hits, but the people that read it are influential, and they're spreading the word. So for digital PR, it's basically, and I've kind of said this earlier outside, I was saying that it's basically word of mouth, but it's word of mouth on steroids, basically, because it's literally like, it's really challenging if, there's a fashion show and it doesn't go down well, it's all over Twitter within like the minute the model leaves the catwalk. So it's always a bit of a challenge, but it really comes down to like really knowing who you're approaching and spending time researching.
Okay.
And I think the most beautiful thing about digital is the creative aspect of it. You're able to kind of reach out to different areas of fashion. You're able to reach out into different talents and collaborate with them. And there's a real beauty of creativity in digital. And that's kind of a new skill set that I think that PRs have had to develop, because I've worked originally in traditional PR, and it was pretty much write a press release, send it out, get a news piece, write a feature story, do an interview. That was kind of it. Get their photo taken. There was no video. There was no rich media content. There was no kind of thinking outside the box. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to develop some really nice brand building exercises as well.
Okay. So from a PR perspective, when you're looking at different blogs and websites, how do you evaluate whether you think something is successful?
Like Diane said, it's a lot to do with instinct. There's a lot to do with look. It depends on the brand. That does it fit with the brand? I mean, there's a lot of great websites out there that have huge amount of traffic, but your brand might want to really target, Celine customer might not be looking on Daily Mail. Maybe she would. I don't know. I don't think so. So you have to really think about who you're targeting online and what that customer would really read online.
Okay.
But it's the research, I suppose, it's across a variety of things. There's a lot of different tools out there to use to measure things. Alexa ratings, there's clout ratings, and just measuring the Twitter stats versus the Facebook stats. What kind of engagement do they have online? Like a magazine might have 2,000 followers, but maybe it has 1 million Facebook fans. So it's something to kind of think about. And then their clout rating and Alexa rating, how much traffic they get from the UK and US. I mean, there's a lot of websites that, and this is a challenge for PRs, because if I'm working on a UK brand, they want to target UK online magazines, but they might actually get a lot of traffic from the US as well. And then a lot of US websites might get a lot of traffic from the UK. So it becomes a bit of a challenge of where do you stop on the outreach, because you might want to reach out to that US because they get a lot of UK traffic. So.
And in terms of the clients you work with, specifically at Carla Otto, which is very high-end designer brands, is there a lot of education that needs to be done from your perspective to the designers?
I think it's an all-round thing in fashion. I mean, people that work in the digital side of fashion really understand it, but there's a lot of people, and I empathise with a lot of traditional PRs, because most of the time they're pretty much logistic managers. They're sending samples out, and it's a full-time consuming job managing samples. So to then have the pressure of having the pressure then to go and research, blogs and Twitter accounts, and it just becomes a little overwhelming. But it is an education thing. It's not going away. And that's something that we're all working towards, and everyone's getting clued up on Twitter and how to use it and engage with it and research and use it as a tool. So, but it's still a learning experience for a lot of people, not just PRs.
Okay, all right, thank you. Right, moving a bit on now, Paula, we're going to ask you a bit about, your experience of what you've done with Purple magazine and how you've introduced the idea of being able to click to buy products. So can you sort of give us a bit of background to how that...
I mean, Purple, for me, was the biggest challenge ever. Olivier hates online, like detests. He doesn't believe in online. He thinks it's bastardised fashion. He thinks everything should stay in print. 2 weeks after I started, he gave an interview about how all bloggers should die, which...
That's nice.
So it started off in like a great kind of vein, and the only thing he could understand how to do is Olivier lives the industry. Like every night he's out at a party and he's with amazing people. And so the easiest way for him to see to go online was to just document this lifestyle.
Oh.
And he didn't even think of it as a blog. And to start with, I couldn't have even told him Purple Diary was a blog because he would have stopped it. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger because he gave an insight, not like a normal blogger in the way it was thought out. He gave an insight into his breakup, and he picture of him taking his daughter to school, and then the Chanel show, and then the new Chanel magazine we were making, and it grew and grew and grew, and it became filled with amazing celebrities and amazing influencers and amazing product. And so then I got there, and it was like a year and a half, and Purple's not a commercial entity really. It's always been anti-fashion, it's always been anti-commercial, it's not really supported its advertisers in the most direct way. And we started getting comments like, where are Chloe Sevigny's sunglasses from, or where is Olivier's leather jacket from? And so I was like, you know what, we should make the diary shoppable. Let's just give people the direct access without kind of having to give way and say, we're going to create special advertorial for these brands. Those brands are all there. And those brands are on people that people really kind of look to and are inspired by in a really natural way. So Purple Boutique came about of just connecting the dots of a link to buy directly from a picture. So it's now a hover. If you go on a diary post, it doesn't interrupt you if you don't want it to be there, but if you choose to be there, you just hover and it tells you all the products in there. It clicks, it brings you to a shopping page, much like Net-a-Porter, where it will pull the thumbnail out the image, it will show you what that product is, and then it will show you where you can buy it.
And how successful has that been?
Do you know what? It's a strange one, because we have the magazine online, which we made shoppable, but it's all like £25,000 Prada coats. They haven't sold so well. Okay. But we've done a lot of books and things like that from Amazon, and lipsticks and shampoos and T-shirts, which are selling at I think it's there's a 25% click-through rate, which is huge.
And do you think this is a lot more magazines are going to do this?
Well, I think a lot more magazines have tried to do it. It's just, how do you make it work as content? Unless you're going to shoot full fashion stories, I don't know whether other magazines have the content right now to do it. I'd say, Net-a-Porter, for example, shoots their stories that are shoppable because they know exactly what their buy is. We've struggled, for example, to sometimes find the product because not everything gets bought. Yeah. So I think it's just that momentum of other magazines finding their space.
But do you think there's a danger of, the magazines devaluing their authority by becoming a store, essentially? I
think really what people go to magazines for is for an influence. Okay. And really a magazine is a store in a way. It's just a store without a direct retail point. Yeah. And we're not doing the direct retail, we're not doing the buy, we're not letting the brands influence what we're choosing, but we are giving them the outlet to find it more easily. It's no different to a shopping page in L.
Yeah, no, I agree. But would you get then brands coming to you saying, we want to sell this specific product rather than this product?
We do, but we say no.
And is it very difficult? Because obviously there's the balance between the commercial and the creative.
I'd say if it wasn't a magazine like Purple, with someone like Olivier who literally refuses to bow, it could be hard.
Okay, so it needs that strong vision at the top to keep that message clear.
Yeah, or maybe you have a bigger team and a bigger staff, and it's a more thought out process like an L shopping page.
Can I just check, can you all hear us? Because our microphones keep going in and out. Everyone here? Okay, good. Okay, thank you. This is kind of a general question to everybody, so maybe we'll go around a bit. And it's sort of thinking about, online media has really opened up the fashion industry. You know, we see a lot more people are able to see a lot more how the fashion industry works. Do we think this is generally positive or negative? You know, and what's the for and against for the fashion industry being much more open because of the internet?
I don't know. I'd say some of the big editors do disagree.
Why do you think that is?
Because they've always had the voice of fashion. You weren't, 3-4 years ago, no one else was allowed into a fashion show. Now with live streaming, everyone's allowed into the fashion show. Everyone can make their opinion, everyone can choose what they like and what they don't like. So I think, for the masses, it's a great thing. But I do think for the industry, people have struggled to come to terms with the lack of elitism.
Okay. And do you think that's the old school part of the industry? So it's the bigger magazines.
Yeah, I guess so. I wouldn't even say it's the bigger magazines. I'd just say it's the old school journalism. And it's also with blogs. There's certain blogs, like Diane said, that are amazing and they do what they do really well. But there's a lot of blogs that don't fact check and they make stuff up and they propagate stuff. And it's like, what's the loss of a journalist? What is real journalism anymore? So that, to me, is the only point at which there's a slight issue.
Okay. Anybody else?
Okay. So I kind of think that the hegemony, the fashion industry is blowing up a little bit because seasons really are about what's going on outside and whether you're wearing a coat or not wearing a coat, and this is the first symptom of that, right? So when Burberry tweeted images of the runway, shots of the garments before they went down the runway, that was the first middle finger up to the press, the buyers, and everyone, and the first embrace of individuals, right? And then, Topshop Unique this season, they had a pop-up store outside the show, didn't they, where you could buy garments. It's becoming very, very direct. And as soon as that starts to happen, and I think Natalie Massenet said something in an interview with probably Imran from Business of Fashion a year or so ago, as soon as this starts to really happen a lot, then why do we even need fashion weeks? Why do we need the cycle? Why doesn't this become just like, it's not very romantic, but why doesn't this become like... Yeah, like every other industry in the world. And when you think about it, this is already happening now, because ASOS drop something like 10,000 garments a week, and they're not necessarily aligned with the season, and probably more people here are wearing something from ASOS than from Alexander from any label, right? So I think this is really interesting. I think things are speeding up, and I think that's really positive. And I think it's positive for anyone that's contributing to the fashion industry and contributing their voice. And it's interesting for anyone that's designing, because it means there's going to be more work out there. And if you've got really niche interests, you're going to be able to get it. So it's all round good for everyone, unless they happen to, be a magazine editor.
Okay.
I totally agree with Geoff. I want to add 2 points to that. I think, especially like an industry like the fashion industry, where it's all about like a product, a product which is like super social in its core and it surrounds us every day. If it's not serving, basically a human, then I don't really understand. So I think we have here a great opportunity actually that we all can join this, and I understand that editors are losing a little bit of influence, but actually it's not that they are losing influence, just like that there are many more people joining the conversation, which is I think great. And I think what is even more great is actually that everything is getting super transparent. So you cannot hide anymore. Literally, if I would speak today with the PR agency, I would tell them not how much fancy stuff they show me, but actually they show me the data.
You can try and hide though, right? Like Tom Ford last season tried to hide. Yep. And how much authenticity did that have?
And that's cool because it's no problem. Like I think both approaches are valid and will survive. From the shareholder's value perspective, this at least what we see with Burberry. I'm not saying that shareholder value is the right thing how to measure value creation, but at least this is how it's done on the stock market. It's working phenomenally well. So it seems there is some correlation between openness and also creating more value.
But do you think there's that issue with, the panel very positive about, open discussion about fashion brings a lot more people to it. It's a lot more interesting. But is it giving a false expectation that there is work for all these people, and that it's just feeding a lot more people for aspirations that aren't going to become reality?
So there's too many fashion graduates, right?
Yeah, there is. Both designers and people that want to work, supporting the industry.
Yeah, of course. But as an industry, what can you do about that other than create more demand, right? So, and broader demand. But I think you can. There's a danger that it turns into like the pop industry, right? And people think they can start a garage band and be the next big thing. But that's pretty bloody authentic, isn't it? There's nothing horrible or exploitative about that. And maybe if more people did that instead of going and doing, interminable internships with 20 different companies, buying me coffee and stuff. Just kidding, we don't do that. We're not Tesco. Then it'll be not organic and a bit real again. And I think this could be the sunrise of an interesting period for the industry.
What about we talked a bit about the speed of the industry and how it is like you're constantly chasing your tail with seasons and collections and drops. Does anybody have concerns that it is just too fast and that you do lose sense of quality?
I'd say for close friends who are designers, they're on the constant brink of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Because there's so many collections now, and they're not designing they're designing ready to wear for. Then they're on cruise, and then there's a shoe line, and then there's a brand collection, and then there's a special thing, and then there's a pop-up store. So I think in terms of the actual designers, it's going to be a point where something has to give. Whether it just means the drops are longer and slower and less comes out in each drop, or there's less drops again. I just think in terms of someone's creativity and being able to produce and make those clothes, especially for smaller brands.
But do you think the internet and online media has a responsibility because it is part of the catalyst that's spreading the message so quickly that the designers and the story and the collection is to communicate?
There's a demand there, I think, especially for big stores like Net-a-Porter and ASOS. As you said, there's so many clothes they have to deliver every single week.
Is there that concern that people want to know more about fashion than actually buy fashion? It's a very different thing.
It's a really interesting question. I think, Melanie could probably answer this better than me because Dazed actually does a lot in terms of stories and actually keeping up.
Yeah, we do. But then I actually don't know whether if we publish a story about Burberry or Gareth Poo, or I don't know if that converts into sales. That's not something that I'm actually particularly interested in.
You're not interested in? Or
well, no, I guess I'm not.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, I just think it's interesting about. It's very interesting about
you can't do everything. I guess I'm interested in creating a story and using each platform I have to build a brand, create a story. Do something nice and interesting and excite the people, but that's one stage of the whole process, I guess. Then what happened in stores, what happened on the e-commerce platform, this doesn't really fall into my, don't have the stats. It would be too much to look at.
Okay. And does anybody else have any opinion on how fast things move in terms of...
there's the negative bit is data, and there's a positive side to it as well. So, for instance, I know Burberry keeps getting mentioned a million times, but they are amazing. But having and analysing data, and this is why your agency is doing so well, is there is so much information out there, but you need someone to analyse it, and that can help with the production and waste. And that's been a major issue with fashion being so fast, particularly with high street brands. I mean, I'm sure you'll remember H&M got into a lot of trouble for slashing a lot of their clothes and throwing them away. Because it's just this like cycle, quickly get it in, get it out, and like Zara drops a trend like within 12 days of it being on a catwalk, and Topshop has 300 new styles a week or something like that, or probably a day. I mean, I don't know. But the positive side is that, you know, through analytics, Burberry are able to know exactly what people are buying there and then in the season. And things won't get made, which kind of loses that kind of creative romanticism of fashion, that, you know, maybe those fantastical things won't come down the catwalk, but that's why you have the couture shows. But it means that those things won't get made, therefore it reduces waste. And it means, you know, I mean, it's better for the environment, basically. And that's been a major kind of challenge, I think, for fast fashion. Yeah, it's been that.
Yeah, I think you've got to be careful to not conflate the business of fashion and the art of fashion, right? Just because you've got a, you know, like we don't all live in houses designed by Mies van der Rohe, but we admire them, and maybe our houses have been inspired by what he did. But you know, it's the very same with fashion. When you buy a £3 vest from New Look, it's not really a design icon, is it? But it happened somewhere. So, you know, I don't think it quenches creativity by having access. I think it enables it, and having that speed. And I think, you know, London already is probably the most rapid market in the world in terms of people wearing crazy different new things every few weeks. So, you know, it's kind of almost not a controversial thing to fly up the flagpole.
Sorry. In terms of, you know, a few people have mentioned Burberry and about the online streaming, which a lot of people talk about. Do you think, you know, with companies doing this constantly, you know, showing their shows live online, from people that go to fashion shows, do you think that it's still a very important experience that journalists, buyers, people that work in the industry go to shows, or is it all going to be completely, everything's going to be online? What do you think the future? Diane?
I've been kind of advocating the end of fashion shows for quite a few years because I think it's so last century.
Okay.
I think it's much more interesting. I mean, I realize that's how the industry empowers itself. But, and there's so many livelihoods depending on it, producers, PR, whatever.
Models.
But I, of course, I think it's more interesting for designers to make films which have no sell-out date, to do a little installation, not to be like afraid that if I do a film I'm not going to get press because I have to do a show. It's really not true. But if you insist on staying with the old idea of doing runway shows, then I think it should be like Tokyo Girls, you know, which has done that for years. Like, they do the fashion show as a spectacle. People pay, they go there for hours, they see the stuff on the runway, they order on their phone, and then you keep like that idea of fashion shows. But for the industry, I don't see the importance of it, really.
Does anybody else agree or disagree with Diane?
Well, I agree and disagree. I mean, I completely... I just think that, you know, like yesterday I watched the Burberry show on my computer, and even though I have the biggest Mac screen, like it was just rubbish. Like, I just didn't really see the point of it. Like, I didn't
see the point of what? Of looking at it on...
Of me being there.
Ah, right, okay.
I mean, you know, it wasn't very exciting. Okay. So I think it's more about having experience, but I agree that then the actual current format of the fashion show, the PR, the celebs arriving, everything is calculated. It's not necessarily exciting, but I've been into really exciting shows, and, you know, it's just like, it takes you. It's like a real experience,
Yeah,
and
really
so yeah, it could be about like a pop-up thing, an exhibition, a film, a screening, something where you go and experience. Because when you just like at the office or on your small iPhone, you can't really experience anything.
Yeah, I think I don't know if you guys go to cinema, but if you do, I've seen ads for watching the theatre experience in the cinema. I don't know about you, but if I want to go to theatre, I go to theatre for the experience of it. So I think that just building on what you're saying, Diane, that if you're going to do a runway, it needs to be an experience and not just a kind of, this is look 1, this is look 2, this is look 3. It needs to be more. And I think that runways, that experience, people will still want to see the clothes and how they fluidly look walking by you in your own 360 view. And I don't know if the fashion shows will go away. I think there's going to be loads of different platforms to showcase. And I think the challenge is being creative on a production budget. And fashion film is a wonderful way. And I think video and film is beautiful. And Naunas do it really, really well. And there's some beautiful pieces out there. But I think it's creativity past the traditional kind of looks on a runway. Okay,
did you want to say something, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I think before us asking yourself if it makes sense or not, I think the core question actually should be what is the purpose? So if the purpose is entertainment and to entertain people, then actually it's an interesting vehicle, I think. But if the purpose is to drive sales, then probably there are more efficient ways of handling it. And I think what is very important for a emerging or upcoming a new fashion designer who is very small budget probably, is like, in which business are you in? Are you in the entertainment business, or are you in the business of selling clothes? And like, if designers come to me, like, I always tell them, guys, actually, like, if you do it the classical way, you are building two companies at once.
Okay.
You're building an entertainment business, which has to be financed, by the way, through the sales. So
they didn't even know they were building one company today. They didn't even know they were building one company. They just thought they were building an amazing label. They just thought they were being creative and building this way of getting a.
I mean, if this is your approach, then you're 100% not going to make it. So if you just like do it for creativity, which is fine, but then you have to understand that this is not where you should make your money, like your living. So that's my response on that. This is very important to understand.
I was just going to say, actually, J.W. Anderson did a really interesting thing on one of his. It was his third show. He had money from the BFC to do his show. So he was going to do his show, and he was going to do it properly, and he was going to do it for the industry to make sure he was seen as a proper designer, and it was like a beautiful event. But what he also did on the flip side was he made every single thing that went down that runway a limited edition, and he sold it from Okini that night, and he live streamed the show. And I think that's the way in which you can balance it. Like, you can tap into the need of the elite and give them access, but you can also think of the commercial side. Okay, so you don't have to kill one to have the other.
So it's about having the understanding of how to utilise.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, we're going to move on slightly now, a bit talking about designers and new designers specifically, from looks perspective, and how designers can use social media and engage in various digital platforms to develop their brand. So, Melanie, can I ask you, what do you think that new designers or designers generally need to think about when they're thinking about communication?
Yeah, I mean, I get lots of people, friends, designer, asking me like, "Oh, how should I position myself?" I mean, yeah, it's really hard to. Yeah, it's really hard because there's not only one platform. There's not just Facebook. There are tons and tons, and like back in the day, there was just Facebook. There was Facebook, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, and more and more. And it's like a full-time job to be able to market yourself, and not only yourself but your brand. So it's then a double work. So there's not one rule. I think it's a real opportunity for any young designer or even more established fashion label to just show what you're really about, and instead of having just words or images, You have word, images, sound. You can do short things, more long format project. You can speak directly to people, but it's like we said earlier, it's kind of it's hard. So I can't really. I think, you know, for people want to see what your not only the end product, but they want to see the whole story from the idea to like the actual team building to the you know, the process of production to then the show, what's happening next, eventually like an event. So yeah, like, you know, showing your process in a magical way. I think that's what it's all about. And
before you were talking about how you devise content strategies.
Yeah, I think, you know, you can't just jump in the water and like think that you need to have a think before. I mean, that would be my opinion. I'm not saying you have to be yourself, but you kind of have to be clear with yourself as to what you are, and then I guess that would come up naturally.
But what would you advise designers then who are wanting to engage in social media? Where to start? What should they be thinking about?
I mean, it's gonna be pretty common sense. I mean, there are platforms that are established, so I would just advise to go on the platform that are out there. Like, you're not gonna start trying something where no one is. So obviously, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. But I would advise for kind of it's common sense, but it's like for each platform there's a specific purpose of that platform. So, you know, it's very important, I think, to do like some sort of content strategy and kind of decide, okay, I'm going to show my process on production via pictures, and I'm only going to put them on my Tumblr. I'm going to use Pinterest to really show where my inspiration is coming from. So I'm going to just create boards about, you know, vintage Belle Epoque pictures or whatever the inspiration's from, and then maybe use more Twitter it's more like the way Twitter works. You're, you know, communicating directly with people. It's more quicker, so maybe you use it more to communicate with the peer from your industry, and, you know, more like as you're at a party and you just talk to people.
Is it about encouraging designers to think about, you know, specifically their customer? And think about how they want to receive information? Or is it about the designer having the authority of this is how I want to do it? Or is it about the end user?
Well, it's kind of like a balancing thing, but I think you would have to start from the designer itself, just showing their vision. And we were talking about intuition before. I think, you know, if you're a designer, you have something to say, so surely you have to use the digital channel to say what you have to say, and then and then people would react, and you can start communication. But I guess especially when you start, and when you're young and fresh, and you have things to say. So
maybe we can bring Tamás in then and ask. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I think the really interesting thing is so if you're on Twitter, you should be human and kind of notable. So, like, Bobby Brown has got Bobby Brown PR. Do you know about the Bobby Brown? Yeah. So she's got this Bobby Brown PR account, and it's run by her PR. And it's like check out my new foundation. It's amazing, and all that sort of crap, right? And then there's the real Bobby Brown, which is actually Bobby Brown, which her PR company isn't very happy about. And she's like, oh, I got trashed and I did this, and, you know, and it's very authentic and real. And guess which one people read and reply to and all that kind of thing. So don't be so precious about your brand, right? And don't try and construct this glass house of what you are. Like, just you know, tell people you got trashed, or say, like, you know, it's really hard work doing this or whatever. And people will really respect that.
So you think it's really important to have a personality, a voice?
Oh, yeah. Otherwise you're dead boring.
Yeah.
You know, I can't count the number of Tumblr accounts I've been to. They're full of inspiring pictures, but I don't know anything about the person. And actually, when you're online, it's just like your friends, right? If someone was just, I don't know, like, it's like Justin Bieber, okay? So if they were pretty and had a nice haircut and all that kind of thing, but actually they were vacuous, you don't really want to hang out with them, do you? You know, you need a bit of grit, you need a bit of humanity about about the people you interact with.
Okay. And then, Tamás, moving on to you, in terms of what you do with Look and how you're about developing the relationship between the customer, and the designer, how important is that in what you're doing?
So first of all, I totally agree. So being on all these social platforms is really a full-time job, literally, and especially doing it right, even more so. But our take on this whole thing is actually that, like, if you would start a fashion label today, what is the fastest route to success? And we, like, at Look, all the team 100% believes in, and then it will be online, and it will be online exactly through a very social way by using all these platforms, and this is like where we come into play. Like, we see ourselves exactly as this kind of like structured environment where you aggregate those followers, which you again engage in all these other social platforms who really care about your brand in terms of like also consuming your merchandise in first place. And to be honest, like, again, it's a full-time job, but probably it's a faster route than to go through all these trade shows who most likely won't let you in anyways. You have huge problems with your suppliers, you have huge cash flow problems. So we believe that the fastest route to build a brand today is using these social platforms, build a tribe around yourself, and find the very, very core of what you are, what your product should be, focus on the product, and sales will eventually come. And it's easier, cheaper, faster.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle, can I ask you a bit in terms of PR perspective and what designers should think about in terms of how they're communicating and who they're communicating with?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to personality and interaction and networking. And the beauty of Twitter is I'm able to say sitting at the back of the room, I can connect with that person right there. I've had a tweet from Jonathan Ross. He's tweeted me back. Like, that was kind of like, whoa, that's kind of cool. That he just tweeted me back, and that was really personal. So it's really beautiful that you're able to outreach directly with like the creative director of Purple magazine, or if they're out there generally, if people are on Twitter, they're open to kind of discussion. So that's kind of the beauty of it. Okay. But I gotta say though, like that, your product has to be good, because social media won't fix it. Yeah. And in fact, it'll do the more negative damage to your brand. So you really think about your product, and think about the inspiration and building everything around that, and building a lifestyle into your brand and your designs. And think about that person and how would that person connect, and what kind of things would that person read, and where would that person go, and that all influences what kind of media you're going to target then. Okay. So yeah, it comes down to research data and everything. Yeah, sorry. Did you want to?
No, I was just like then thinking, it's not, if you don't feel like being on Twitter, I don't see that it's necessary that you have to go on Twitter. Yeah. Like, it's this thing, like sometimes like brands, they're like, oh yeah, okay, we're launching this new product. Okay, so we need a Facebook page, a Twitter, but they have nothing to say, and that's just the worst thing. And maybe you can launch a brand or a collection with just a Tumblr, with a concept, and that's it. And then that's your PR message, and you don't need to do a Twitter to say what, to follow who, there's no point. And I think that's where I've met lots of people, PR, more brand side of, people in-house. And sometimes it feels that they just, don't even think. They're like, okay, we're going to apply this formula, but it's a wrong formula.
Okay, and from PR again, either one of you guys really, should designers be thinking about who they're communicating with, as in potential customers, or whether it's the industry? Is there a difference?
Yeah, maybe it comes again to what I just said. I think that each platform has its purpose, and you can because obviously you need to speak to the industry peer, like your to the industry, to your customers, to like buyers. Like, it's kind of like you have to speak to lots of different people. So maybe it's about doing what I was mentioning earlier, like a content strategy, like a self-branded content plan. Like, it seems like crazy, but that's
okay.
This is who I guess.
maybe one comment, because I really, really want to emphasize on this. Like, I think if your product doesn't work online, it won't work anyways. And online is the fastest, cheapest route to figure this out. I mean, and that's the only way forward. Like in 5 years' time, I really think that the majority of fashion companies will launch products online and figure out their product market fit online with that product and move on from there. I mean, it's already happening with the Burberrys of the world, and actually it's very natural that actually it should actually be on a lower level of the market as well.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to disagree with you, Tamás, because I think that this is where the panel gets more interesting, I think. When Marc Jacobs puts a whole bunch of plastic dresses that you can see through down the runway, right? They're not commercial, and that's important for his brand. And when you're a designer looking to be discovered, right? If that's your route, if that's how you think you're going to make your career, then don't make safe things that you can commercially sell the next day. Be massively controversial, get everyone's attention, provoke rather than just be mass market. So I don't know if it's that simple.
I think it's the difference between fashion being an art form and actually being a creative thing that you want to do and you're passionate about, and being a retailer. And it's a different thing. It's and it's almost like the difference in the way that a high street brand would go about copying something and Chanel would do couture. It's a completely different thing, and there's no way Chanel should just do couture online to sell the £45,000 dress. That's what I mean, is that it should have, there's different levels. Fashion is like not just a business, it's an art as well.
Okay.
And also I'm sure everyone noticed, like, it's been like 5 years, or like it's all about pop-up shop, and you would think that this is kind of like not so on trend, but actually there are more and more, and I think it's just about this new trend about actually going where your customer is, and like not waiting for them to come where you are. You just come to them, and it seems that it's working. Again, I don't have like stats or anything, but I can see that there are more and more, and I've read a report about this, and it seems that it's like this idea of going to meet your
customer, and understanding how they want to.
And it seems that people want that experience. And
Tamás.
Geoff, I really thought. I hope that you really disagree with me, but actually, I think actually you just confirmed what I was saying. I mean, namely that. So what you were referring to is what I would call the story of the brand, right? Of course, you need to do that. So that's it.
I think what we need to remember is Chanel has its couture shows, but it sells sunglasses and perfume and lipstick. And the biggest selling things online are those things that you don't really need to try on. Like shoes generally always fit, sunglasses generally always fit, and that's the beauty of like the fashion industry, is that you can have these incredible fantasy shows, and that's why people buy the sunglasses, because they want to buy into that culture. So that's, I think, as a young designer, remember not to lose your kind of vision, but also, I was just talking with an Irish designer at Fashion Week and in London, and she was really under pressure to put more commercial product into her lookbook, and we were like, no, don't do that. This is where you're going to sell the vision of your brand.
The idea,
and then when in store, you can have all those pieces. But you want to draw people in, not by your white t-shirts, but by your beautiful dresses.
Okay. And finally, just a question to everybody, really. In terms of, Diane was saying before about, she thinks fashion shows are irrelevant and they maybe will die away. Not totally, but you think, that there's a change, and there is definitely a change. But are there any other predictions that that sense are going to happen in relation to social media or fashion online, that things that you think are bubbling up or you think is going to happen or feels quite exciting?
I think so. IMG have a little baby that they're growing at the moment with Facebook, because I don't think really Facebook engagement in the fashion industry has really been executed that well. There's a community there kind of talking and liking things, and but it hasn't really been tapped into in terms of a commerce perspective. So IMG are working on a thing called Fashion Week Live, Fashion World Live, and it's going to be pretty big. Their kind of target audience, I don't know if you've heard about it, but their target audience is about 150 million. So gaming is kind of big. I mean, if you think about fashion, it's kind of just a game anyway, because it's all like, you know, oh my god, what are you wearing? Okay, I'm wearing this. Like, you know, it's a naturally competitive industry to get the next trend, to be seen in the next thing. So I think gaming, I think my kind of insight would be gaming.
Okay.
And I think watch out for that Facebook application, because when you consider things like, I'm sure you've all been like invited to Farmville and Texas Hold'em and all this kind of stuff, and like when they launched, like Farmville had a ridiculous amount, I think it was like twice the size of what IMG are hoping to get to, and that's okay drop, but there's still 75 billion people using Farmville, and I think that's going to be a big thing, is gaming, online gaming for fashion.
Gaming. Anybody else sense anything happening?
I'd say like the kind of outdoor coming together with online. I mean, a lot of brands, kind of, you know, fair trade brands and things like that, are talking about putting QR codes on their swing tags to kind of show the transparency of their supply chain. Okay. So you can, you know, you take a picture of your swing tag in the store and you know exactly where your t-shirt was made, how far it travelled to get to that shop, what it was made of, probably the name of the person who sewed it. Yeah. You know, and I think that's a really interesting thing, where digital becomes much more part of the real world and the real experience.
And tells the story of that project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a high street brand in Australia called Sports Girl, and I don't know if anyone saw that Tesco concept that they did in Korea, where they had like a tube station and they had QR codes and stuff of all the products, and you could like fill your basket with your smartphone. So Sports Girl saw that, and being Australians that are, you know, over ambitious, they did it. So you could walk past a Sports Girl store, which is a terrible name for a store incidentally, but anyway, and you can shop their collection from a front window using your phone. But I still think that, you know, there's all sorts of things bubbling up, like M-commerce and F-commerce and all sorts of stuff. But they're all a bit of a wreck, really. Like, no one's really selling online that amazingly well yet, you know, with the exception of ASOS, Net-a-Porter, you know, which are enormous businesses. So there's a lot more fundamentals to get to.
There's still a lot of places that brands have to go to get it right. Yeah.
And I think just saying what Paula was saying about bringing the kind of reality to the virtual world. It's not about that Second Life thing anymore. It's going to a different level. And this thing with Fashion Week Live, you know, it's, you know, this competition where you go on, you create your life, and Pat McGrath is the creative director of it. So it's going to be, you know, there's a lot of investment for the last 4 years going into this. And it's going to be a wonderful product, I'm sure, with IMG behind it. But the thing to note about this is that, you go on and create your world, and you can shop your world and create a look from the catwalk and everything like that, but you're giving reward points. And the way they're connecting the virtual world with reality is that if you kind of build up like this portfolio yourself in this virtual world, it can lead you to a real world job. So if you create this beautiful shoot using like Google Maps or whatever from some place you've been in the world, and you used like different collections in a really creative way, someone like, you know, like Burberry or whatever could offer you like a job at an internship, a placement for like 3 months. So that's I think you're right that it is connecting the two worlds together.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I think we're going to do some questions now. So thank you, panellists. And has anybody got any questions? Oh yeah, we've got some down there. Are we going to pass the microphones back? Are we going to pass this back? Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. You were talking about trends, of how the social media is changing trends. Do you feel that what all you've spoken today about is, I feel that when we do the show, there's a lot of hype around the show. So do you think it's almost better to do it in the beginning of the season, supply the market with the product and with the social media, and get it out there when the going is good? Do you think that could be one of the trends as well?
Yeah, why the pause, right? Like, strike while the iron's hot, all that. Yeah, I think that's almost conventional wisdom now, right?
Is it the only thing I'd say is a production thing?
Yeah, you're taking risks if you...
It's the terms of like actually producing that product in time.
you can't do that unless you're an enormous brand and you've got your supply chain buttoned up and you've got factory time booked and everything. It's a
that's there. But if Asian can do 1,000 pieces, I can produce 10 pieces and actually keep it fresh in the market, rather than sort of copying it down to 1,000 pieces and selling it the next season.
Well, yeah, exactly. And in fact, like this is the whole thesis of our business, right? Is that if you're H&M and you want to produce 10,000 of those, are you going to sell them, right? And we're about helping people button that up and really understand, quantitatively if that will happen or not. But I think, if you can produce 10 pieces and you can do that really locally, then that's brilliant for everyone, isn't it? And that's a good message. So, yeah, do that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions?
Maybe to the question or like statement that that social media is changing trends. I think it's changing trends. It's just like amplifying and really like make the ones which are really trends more transparent. It's more bottom-up approach than top-down. But we don't really change that. I mean, it's done by humans, so there's no change in that, I think.
Well, in your discussion, you have talked more about the digital world and media and how they apply to brands and designers. But when it comes to press, even though the online magazines become more and more and more, I have a feeling that the print is still going strong. I find myself as a stylist, since I'm in a fully online magazine because the director was all about videos and moving images and that can only be done online. Since the change from print to online form, I find people being a little bit more cautious about it. People are also asking, what is a hard copy? Why is it done online? They don't trust it.
Okay. As a stylist, your portfolio is now digital. Okay. Okay, how it's regarded.
Okay, so at the end of the day, client still wants to be in Vogue magazine, print. It's still I can vouch for that from the variety of clients and from my freelance. At the end of the day, they want to be in Vogue. Vogue online versus Vogue magazine, they're totally two different experiences. They're not the same thing. The Vogue online offers completely different content. I don't even know if they sit down in the same editorial meeting. I doubt it. So they're two different platforms basically, and I think it all comes down to experience. What does the customer want to experience? And I mean myself, like I treat myself to Wired magazine and print. I don't know. I just still love to pick up print magazine. I probably should be reading on my iPad, but there's something about it, and I think it's all comes down to personal experience. So yeah, but I mean it's from a PR perspective, like. It's a lot easier to place a feature in something online than it is in print. And the reason for that is space.
And it's quicker.
Yeah. It's space. So therefore, because there's a limited space in a print magazine, if you get into that, it's a bit more special. Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't think print magazines are ever going to go away, to be honest. And that's from my personal perspective, from my personal experience of magazines. I still have my coffee table ones and, and ones that are collectible that I like to pick up. And Purple is a perfect example.
Biannual magazines, I don't think will ever die out. And I think they'll become more and more expensive and more important. I think you'll your fast magazines and the things like Grazia, which are very news-focused, and you don't keep, I don't have 10,000 Grazias lined up on my shelf, but I do have another, and I do have an archive of Purple, and, they're like books. They're like reference books of that season. Purple's £17. I wouldn't throw £17 away twice a year, and I think that's where print becomes something actually more important. It becomes something you really treasure and you really keep.
Like you said, it's a different experience of going online and going through print, isn't it? And people accept that both of them can function together. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
And I think PRs and brands will come around to the fact and make it easier for stylists to call in online because they'll understand that actually it's more likely to lead to a direct sale. But they still want to be in print for the luxury element. as you said, it's the status, it's to be like included, whereas you could include everyone online. Somewhere online, everyone can be included.
About in general fashion at the moment, it's either people tend to buy either top-end luxury or they just generally go to like Primark, the Topshop, the High Street to get all their clothing. So if someone's like wants to set up their own company, how what do you predict for like the future for like small businesses who want to have a business in the fashion industry?
Where to pitch your business in the industry in terms of high or low, and how to use the internet to support that?
No, basically, from what I'm seeing in the industry, it's like it's either your luxury or people just tend to buy, you know, the high street. So, like, yeah.
It's where you could find your luxury, like at Crété, for example. How huge, and I'm really close to them as brands, and they're friends of mine. They don't advertise. They refuse to advertise, and they never will, because it means they then have to fall into competing with those luxury brands and in those luxury publications. So all they've done is throw really amazing parties and given jeans to people. And through that, they've built a presence. They've aligned themselves with people kind of socially. You know, they've given jeans to people with good social media followings and built themselves that way. I think if you want to go for the middle ground, you can't compete with either fraction because they've got so much money to throw around. You just need to be more inventive and kind of more intimate, I guess, with the way you sell things, rather than trying to compete with advertising budgets of the real luxury fashion or the, you know, or the mass market.
Yeah, I think again, like focus on the product, like find something which, like really one single product, not the whole collection, one single product, which is somehow like attracts people, and take it from there.
Okay.
And the brand and the product have got to be really close, right? If you think about Acne, they communicate with their products as well as with their brand, and they're quite well linked, and the price points are great and all that sort of thing. And that's really, it's like everyone's been saying, that's the only place you can enter the market. It's kind of the only price point that's interesting.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Do we have one more time for one more question?
I just wanted to ask, I read somewhere that brands will now start using their own kind of platform to have their own advertisements, so create their own magazines as opposed to pay, say, £50,000 to advertise in Vogue. Do you think that's a wise move, and do you think that would ever take effect, and how is it going to affect the brand in terms of sales and their customers? How would they build it into their brand culture?
I would say personally, only if they can hire the right editorial staff and steal them from the right magazines. Your voice, your publication is only as good as your voice. So if you do not have the best stylists and the best editors and the best journalists, there's no point. The reason you're in Vogue is because of how well written it is, or you're in Dazed because of how well styled it is. So Mr. Porter, or those, you know, I mean, do you want to talk about how they've taken their editorial teams from the industry? They've gone into the industry and they've gone into the best magazines and they've recruited staff that way. But I'd say even Days, for example, is working with major brands to create editorial for those brands. And you know, and Purple, or even like side projects, like we make a lot of film for brands at Purple. So I think the problem with a brand trying to do their own thing is their creative voice strong enough, you know?
I agree. I agree. Like in theory, you could think, yes, that's the logical model, but in reality, it's not. It's never as good. Maybe in the future, but I really believe that when you're making a magazine, it's a team that has been put together and that really creates something and believe in what we're doing, and we're not having those sales things. That's why earlier I said I don't care. That's not what I'm about. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we're going to have to finish. So can we say thank you very much to our panel members? Thank you.